Hello! I survived Hooptober and I have thoughts. I will get you through the rest of the movies that I watched, which were 11, plus all the personal extras. Yes, there were some that really irritated me and I feel like I have to vent, so I'm gonna use the void to do that. Because what else is the void here for but to scream into it? And on that note, welcome back to me screaming into the void. With 48 movies, 10 decades, and countless screams into the void, I am back. As you might remember from my Midpoint review, I was already spiraling between Cronenberg's Infections and Slavic Witches. And now it's over. I am kind of relieved and kind of sad because it was quite an experience. If you're wondering, you can watch my first video on what the challenge is about and the movies that are listed and what they are about. And other than that, you can check out my Midpoint update for my thoughts on the 23 movies that I watched up to the first week of October or the second, I don't remember. It's a huge muddle right now in my brain. There were a lot of movies, there were a lot of thoughts, and I will let you know in the end, but there was one movie I couldn't watch and I'm glad it was just an extra, but I gave up on that one, and personally, I'm not mad that I did. I just threw the baton and was like, you know what? I'm done. This is it. This is the end. I am going to end it on a high note and I will not watch that movie. Let's wrap things up with my favorites, my biggest surprises, and my disappointments, along with some final unhinged thoughts in the very end. Favorites. Now, this should have been also a surprise, but it turned out to be such a big surprise that I wanted it in my favorites. It's Night of the Eagle, or Burn Witch Burn, from 1962, directed by Sidney Hayers. It's adapted from Fritz Leiber's novel Conjure Wife. This British occult thriller pits academic rationalism against witchcraft. This movie was insane. They even added a pre-show protective incantation warning people who watched the movie and breaking thus the fourth wall. My personal favorite thing about this is that the whole movie is in a nice little package delivered to you that starts with "I do not believe," as the professor circles it in vehemently, and it ties back into the end and gives you an insight to the thoughts that were going on in the main character's head, because little did Professor Taylor know, little did he know, it is a masterclass in making movies. From the camera work to the over-dramatized acting, the drama, I tell you, the drama, there was so much of, and I was all there for it. The camera work was as dramatic as the acting. I found it very refreshing, as you can see by my face. Mesmerizing movie. I really cannot believe that this is the same director who did the Knight Rider series. When I researched him, I was there flabbergasted in front of my computer and I was like, what? Okay. I mean, if you know the Knight Rider series and you're wondering how the directors started off, I would highly suggest you watch this movie and then let me know what you thought of it. This was one of my personal favorite treats. Next movie. It was one of the extras on the Hooptober list itself, which we could watch if we wanted to. Trick or Treat from 1986, directed by Charles Martin Smith. It's this heavy metal horror with Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons, who have cameos in it, and the soundtrack is by Fastway, with one of the most insane stage performances I have seen on screen. The effects were fantastic, which doesn't surprise me because it's Kevin Yeager who was responsible for them. He was also responsible for the effects on Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play, and Sleepy Hollow, to name a few. From pulling people out of TVs, moms going to Halloween parties, to a rock legend in tight leather pants with hair to die for. This movie had everything I could wish for, and if you haven't seen it yet, which I'm sure, judging by my viewers' tastes, you have, but if you haven't, watch it and let me know what you thought of it. And then we get to Wizard of Oz from 1939, directed by Victor Fleming. It is one of the most famous Technicolor productions ever, which was shot on multiple NGM sound stages with a Tin Man who was hospitalized due to his makeup. This spite of its infamously cursed set and the sad affair that was Judy Garland and what she had to go through on set, this movie still remains a landmark in fantasy cinema. And upon a rewatch, I was dreading it since I despise musicals, and despite its blatant ear sores, this movie still managed to spark something magical in me. I have to low-key admit that I was glad I rewatched it. I can see you smiling or cringing. I don't know which of the two you're doing right now. Next up, Sunshine, 2007, directed by Danny Boyle. A much anticipated rewatch for me. I was super excited because I did also watch 28 Years Later this year, and I was like, you know what, this is gonna be on the challenge. It's a psychological sci-fi thriller that gradually mutates into cosmic horror. The cinematographer Alvin Küchler chose lights specifically for their flaring potential. I like the fact that Alex Garland wanted his film to argue for atheism, where people are facing a godlike entity, the sun, and realizing how small humanity is in this vast universe. Danny Boyle, who is more spiritual than Garland, saw the mission as this mystical quest. This clash of interpretations is intentionally reflected in the movie itself, and it explores how the characters' beliefs are affected by the immense power of the sun, where you have some sticking to logic while others descend into complete and utter spiritual madness. Unlike many others, I loved the shift that it took in the third act. It has a very slashery vibe to it that many were mad at. Me, as you might know, who does like slashers, I didn't mind it at all. I actually thought it was a nice uptake to the movie because you get into this world of the sun and people obsessed with the light and staring into the sun too long and having this epiphany or hungering after this bigger force that is right in front of them and trying to save the world by replacing it with another sun, and then having these questions of who are we to do that. Then to have this shift. I don't want to spoil it for anyone because I feel like you should watch the movie. I also have to say two things. I'm a massive fan of Danny Boyle and Alex Garland. For me, until now, they could do no wrong. This movie was visually stunning. Cillian Murphy touches the sun with this one, and I'm here for all of it. Next up, Sinners, 2025, directed by Ryan Coogler. Now, on the first watch, I was a bit confused and there was a lot going on. And at first, I thought this story seems to be a little bit all over the place. However, upon a second watch, everything has its place and everything was put there for a reason. It's a Southern Gothic vampire tale that is set in Mississippi, with many of the musical performances being recorded live on set, which gives the whole atmosphere on screen so much more life. It has a blues-infused score by Ludwig Göransson, and Michael Fontaine is the creature makeup effects designer. He is also known for his work in The Penguin, The Batman, and Joker, which fits the vibe completely also for this movie. I loved the vampires. I loved how they made the eyes glow in the dark. The ending, fantastic. For me, this movie was even better on a rewatch. It gave me full goosebumps in that guitar at the end before the credits roll. The first half feels like the beginning of an odyssey, focusing on the twin brothers Smoke and Stack, who are both played by Michael B. Jordan, as they return in their hometown in 1930s Mississippi and work towards opening a juke joint that very evening. The evening, however, morphs into this deliberate descent into vampirism that ties into so many layers of history and culture. The vampires in Sinners literally feed on more than just blood. They feed on the legacy and the culture of the people, and the music carries so much of that throughout the entire movie. My favorite scenes were the dreamlike through the ages sequence and the eerie Irish song that the vampires sing. Also, I liked that scene where the vampires, the three of them, are in front of the barn. There is definitely meaning and context that I'm still learning to fully understand, but even from the outside perspective, it's a hypnotic piece of story storytelling. If you have watched it once and were kind of meh about it, maybe on a rewatch you will like it, or maybe you don't want to sit through 3 hours of a movie, which I respect because you have better things to do, unlike me. Biggest surprises: The Return of the Living Dead, 1985, directed by Dan O'Bannon. It's this chaotic punk spin on Romero's zombie mythos and featuring the first on-screen mention of brains as a zombie food, and its green trioxin gas has since become horror legend, making the zombies intelligent and unable to be killed in the conventional means that we knew up until that moment. For me, it was very chaotic, very 80s, loved the effects. The story was fine, I guess. There was a lot of weird naked gyrating. If you know me, naked gyrating is not so mine. Maybe that's why I didn't like Coralie Farja's Substance. I don't know. I would never get naked at a graveyard and gyrate around. Next up, #Alive from 2020, directed by Cho Il-hyung. This is a pandemic-era survival horror about isolation, live streams, and digital loneliness, with stunt performers handling the zombie choreography instead of CGI. The choreographer was the same as the guy who did Train to Busan and Kingdom, Ye Hyo-sung, and he designed the zombie movements to be uniquely aggressive and dynamic. On paper, it sounds kind of boring because the movie is about this high-rise. In my book, high-rises are not a boring premise. The zombies were a lot of fun, and the story carried itself pretty well, if you think about the fact that the movie was made in the pandemic. This one surprised me, loved the practical effects, pretty entertaining considering the premise of being stuck in a high-rise. Second movie that surprised me, Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead from 2023, directed by Yusuke Ishida. It is adapted from Haro Oso's manga. This bright, bloody satire turns a burnout situation and late-stage capitalism into literal zombification. Wild practical gags, the inflatable shark sequence included. For those who've seen it, I'm not gonna say more, but that was partly practical. I'm just saying. It had a couple of moments where it was getting into a lull, but overall, I liked that manic happiness. Honestly, I would be exactly the same. If the zombie apocalypse were to break out, first thing I would do is rejoice that I do not have to go to my 9-to-5 job anymore. I have 1.5 hours commute one way, no car, just trains and buses. I don't know if this is a fun fact, but my last bus leaves for home at 8. I can't do anything past 8 o'clock, which is also a nice excuse because then I can be like, work parties and stuff. I'm like, oh no, I have to leave for home. Anyway, the movie started off really strong. The middle fizzled out a bit, but it recuperated pretty well with the ending. The zombies were awesome, and the ending was over the top. If you don't take this movie too seriously, you'll have a really good time. Disappointments! This one is gonna peeve off some people because I feel like the Spirik brothers, yes, it's that one. The Spirik brothers have a couple of fans out there. It's Undead from 2003, directed by Michael and Peter Spirik. It's their debut. It's self-financed and low budget, and it's an Australian zombie sci-fi mashup, and it all sounds really good on paper. I appreciate that they financed it all themselves and did everything themselves. I have nothing but love for people who just try and do it. I haven't done it yet. I don't even know how to self-finance a movie if I tried. The Spirik brothers also did most of the post-production, including the editing and the visual effects themselves, using home computers. For me, it was a tough watch. Some of the scenes had color grading that was so blue, and suddenly there was nothing that I could see but blue, and I got mad at the blue. I felt blue watching so much blue. And the music made me feel like I was watching a kids show. There is Teletubby in 28 Years Later, which was on point. And then there is Undead from 2003. The acting was subpar. I got really bored. All the love to the movie makers. I'm sorry. Next up, Dance of the Dead, 2008, directed by Greg Bishop. It was filmed on weekends with mostly a high school cast. Bishop intentionally cast local kids to give it this awkward high school feel to the performances. Again, all the love to the movie maker for being able to pull this through. There were a couple of scenes that I enjoyed. Did not expect to see Justin Welborn and Blair Redford in it. That was definitely a surprise. Loved the garage band moments. Those were a lot of fun, and it added a nice twist to the story in the end. It had its moments, but it was mostly just meh. And now we get to the third and final disappointment that I couldn't finish watching. It's the German Chainsaw Massacre from 1990, directed by Christoph Schlingensief. Mr. Schlingensief, I apologize. I know that it's this chaotic, politically charged splatter satire that was made right after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and he shot it guerrilla style on the east-west border using real border ruins as sets. I couldn't do it. Maybe because I watched Sinners right before that, and this one was such a juxtaposition that I was like, no. Even for me, it was way too much chaos. And since it was one of those extras that we didn't have to watch, I didn't feel too bad about it. Personal extras. First up, Wake Up 2023, directed by Anouk and Johan Karl Wiesel. It's a Gen Z eco-activist break into an IKEA-esque megastore and ends up being these eco-activists who are being hunted by a security guard who treats the place like his personal game reserve. I was a big fan of The Summer of '84 and Turbo Kid. Despite its promising premise, it lost me halfway through. You have this insane dude who is obsessed with hunting, and you have these teenagers who are doing some stuff in the name of justice and screaming for blood of those who are killing the forests. It could have gone so camp, and instead it went this weird halfway serious tone where I wasn't sure what it was doing exactly. It was also due to the fact that the actors were maybe not sure which direction it should have gone. In my opinion, if you would have gone camp, this movie could have been excellent. I'm talking the same with that French movie. That movie did it really well, where you had these vegan activists attacking meat shops, and then the meat shop starting to attack the activists and selling their meat. See, that's the vibe I was expecting from this movie, and instead I got this weird thing where it didn't leave me satisfied. The teens were literally wearing animal masks, and the hunter was literally doing weapons himself. Next up, Queens of the Dead 2025, directed by Tina Romero. It had a full cast with the wonderful Dominic Jackson, Katie O'Brien, Jack Haven, and Tom Savini, just to name a few, because there was a plethora, with Lindsay Gelfand leading the special effects team. I found it pretty funny what the negative reviews were concentrating on. Then again, if you think about the premise of drag queens and club kids battling zombies, I'm sure it ruffled some feathers. I personally found it a lot of fun. However, somehow I was expecting a little bit more oomph just because she's Romero's daughter and the premise was pretty simple, and I was just expecting it to be more. Then again, you know, it's her directorial debut. It might have been too much to ask for to go full World War Z. It would have been fun to watch drag queens taking over the world and battling zombies all over the place. Next up, Magmag 2025, directed by Yurian Retriever. It world premiered at the Beyond Fest and was produced under K2 Pictures, which has Takashi Miike, Hirokatsu Koreeda, and Miwa Nishikawa on the board. This ended up being one of those gems where I'm like, what did I just watch? This is awesome. This is a curse revenge spiral that is feral and adds a new twist to J-horror. It was funny, it was scary, and very unique, and I did jump at that one jump scare. It had so many great elements to the story. It was all over the place and yet very cohesive. It was just this wonderful, unhinged little gem that I highly recommend you catch it when you can. Next up, Telephone Box from 1972, directed by Antonio Mercero. It had a lot of symbolisms considering the historical background of General Franco's autocratic rule at that time. The simple story is it's about this man who is stuck in a phone booth and cannot escape. But the symbolism behind it has so much more to give to the story. You have this man who is out in public, stuck in an inescapable booth, representing the oppressive control of the government. You have the indifferent public who's gawking at him from the outside, symbolizing the people who are either accepting what's happening or turning a blind eye to the injustice. And you have this final revelation where the man is taken into this cavern filled with other booths, representing the thousands of people that this appeared during Franco's regime. There is a man stuck in a phone booth, and it takes a very dark and sinister turn. I found it very interesting to watch. Creepshow 2, 1987, directed by Michael Gornick. Now, I watched this one before I did Creepshow 1, and I'm happy I did. The outline is written by Stephen King, and George Romero then adapted it into a screenplay. There were originally 5 stories written, like in Creepshow the original. However, 2 of the planned segments were cut for budget reasons. One was The Cat from Hell, that later appeared in Tales from the Dark Side, while the other story was Stephen King's Pinfall, about ghostly rival bowling teams. I cringed a couple of times, and the last story was my favorite, about the woman who got persecuted by the guy she drove over. And regarding the one with the lake, I really liked the effects. I loved the acting. It was really nice. However, there were a couple of scenes that really irked me, especially when she fell asleep, which just made me personally cringe. But he deserved what was coming. It didn't age too well, in my opinion, and you can fight me in the comments on that part. Creepshow, 1982, directed by George A. Romero. The boy who appears in the beginning is Joe Hill, who is the son of Stephen King and now is a writer in his own accord. I've read The Fireman, Nosferatu, and Heart-Shaped Box. I loved all 3 books. I think he is amazing. That is my take on Joe Hill. Fluffy the Creature from the Crate was the first fully animatronic creature Tom Savini made, and he got advice from Rob Bottin, who did the special effects for The Thing, The Howling, and Total Recall, on how to build it. It was a lot of fun. All the 5 stories had their own element. I liked it way better than I did the second one. My favorite story is definitely the first one, Father's Day. Also, that dance scene was hilarious. And Fluffy. I didn't like the wife that much, and I felt like she was very one-sided. However, the creature itself was a lot of fun. Then I watched The Astronaut from 2025, directed by Jess Varley. It's the psychological science fiction horror about an astronaut who's quarantined in a high security house after a crash. It's all about paranoia and zero floating in the atmosphere. I didn't mind the whole atmospheric vibe the movie was bringing, because it was this whole cat and mouse game, and then there was that twist, and there was a lot of neon glow in the end. If you like slow burns and science fiction, it's more spooky boo vibes than full-on alien drool. The Fetus, 2025, directed by Joe Lamb. I wanted to like this movie. I didn't. This indie shocker leans hard into religious horror and prosthetic effects. I mean, it's a devil fetus and Lauren Lavera, the final girl from Terrifier 2. What more would you want from a movie? Really nice practical effects. Loved the fetus. Loved the whole portal thing and fire and brimstone. But yeah, some movies look really good on paper, and then you watch them and you're like, no. Vicious, 2025, directed by Brian Bertino. It's shot with his usual stripped-back realism and natural lighting. He is also known for The Strangers, the first one, not the remakes. Chapter 1 and 2. Have you watched Chapter 1 and 2? What was that? I thought we were learning about where The Strangers came from. The second one was... If you want me to give you a full review about these 2 movies, I can make a double feature and get angry at it. I'm just warning you, it's gonna be a ranty one. He's known for The Strangers and The Dark and the Wicked. I didn't mind this movie, and Dakota Fanning is amazing as usual. I have no qualms about any of it. There is a box and it does stuff. The creepiest part of it was that old lady in the beginning. Why do people keep inviting old ladies into houses? I'm also talking weapons. Stop doing that. Stop inviting old people into houses. Have you learned nothing from all those old ladies who are trying with pamphlets to convert you into things? No, that's okay. I did. I would not. If there is an old lady I don't know, I would not let her in the house. If she needs water, I would tell her, well, too bad, or I would chuck a water bottle out of my window. Take that, old lady! Next, The Conjuring Last Rites, 2025, directed by Michael Chavez. This is reportedly and luckily the final Conjuring chapter in the main Conjuring franchise. I'm pretty sure they're gonna milk that cow until she dies. It's starring the great Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. However, they get completely lost in whatever that movie was. It's the longest in the Conjuring universe, and it shouldn't have been. It takes 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I sat through all of it. What in the name of the unholy was that? I felt like I was watching the Disneyfication of horror. Throw in some Indiana Jones vibes. I'm talking the Crystal Skull Indiana Jones. What a waste of Farmiga and Wilson. Why? Why would you do that to a movie? I feel like in some horror movies, they've completely lost the plot and have started doing things that are very feel good. And I'm like, yes, horror has a place for feel good, but this just wasn't it. If you've watched it, let me know. If you haven't, who am I to tell you not to watch it? If you enjoyed the first 3, I'm sure you'll enjoy this one too. I enjoyed the first and the second-ish. The first because it was the first and I was like, whoa, this is something new. And by now I'm like, whoa, this is not good. Then I watched The Exorcist 3, Legion, the one that William Peter Blatty actually envisioned. This movie is adapted from Blatty's novel Legion and aligns way more closely to his original vision of the movie. It does not feature an exorcism and it does not feature Jason Miller as Father Karras. Instead, you have Brad Dourif, who is featured way more in this movie. I love the ending. I found it weirdly stitched together, but that's just because it is this Frankensteinian product, because there was material that was thought to be lost and then they found it again, and I guess Blatty didn't have enough funds to be able to stitch it together the way that he envisioned it. If you ignore the blatant eyesores that are these stitched together parts, I did enjoy this one more than I did the original Exorcist 3. Then I watched Pumpkinhead 1988, which was directed by Stan Winston. It was shot in California with his team's practical creature work and a fog budget that would suffocate an entire village. So much fog. I loved it. You know, somebody's coming from a background of practical effects when you use fog to be able to mask certain things and be able to create this atmosphere. There was so much love in the practical effects. This one was definitely on my list for a while. I didn't know what to expect from it. I enjoyed it, maybe also because I do really have a very high appreciation for special effects in movies that are practical, way more than I do CGI or AI that is slowly seeping into the movies. Please don't. I don't want any AI in the movies. I really don't. I had a lot of fun with the set design and the creature feature. The kids are bad thing was a bit on the nose. Sometimes the simplest of plots will get the story going, and since it's a directorial debut, sure. Sometimes you need to start simple to be able to create more chaos with the movies that you will do in the future. And now we get to one that I hope I will keep myself together enough not to go completely on a rant tirade. Friday the 13th, 2009, directed by Marcus Nispel, Mr. Nispel. You tried to do a reboot that remixes elements from all 4 movies. You included hyper-stylized violence, and yes, it was produced by Michael freaking Bay, and it had the subtlety of a weed whacker. Imagine if Michael Bay did a horny, cliched 2000 nonsensical BS of a horror movie. That is absolutely one of the most vile things I have ever seen. How has this movie even been brought up into existence? That baby oil scene? The baby oil scene? Really? You are in the middle of the woods and you have your perky bananas out and you're rubbing yourself in baby oil in the middle of the night behind your dude's friend who's right in front of you? Give me one woman who would do that, unless they were shooting a carno in the woods in the middle of the night. I will not accept that as a fact. I'm mad. I hate this movie. I hate this movie so much. And don't tell me in the comments that it's meant to be a freaking commentary, because this looked more like Michael Bay needing a freaking excuse to have some material for himself in his special archives than anything else. God, the hatred I have for this movie. No Telling, 1991, directed by Larry Fessenden. It's this modern Frankenstein reframed as environmental horror. It's early Fessenden on 16mm with suffocating interiors and bad vibes for days. This movie made me feel very queasy in all the right and the wrong ways. I loved the camera work. I liked the music. I hated the ending with passion. I simply cannot watch animals get tortured. Also, you cannot tell me that that cow who got dragged across the field was okay in real life. And that dog? I had to physically remove myself from the screen and walk away and stop the movie because I was physically ill. Yes, we can agree on the fact, great camera work, the claustrophobia that it created made me also want to walk away. Just keep your hands off of animals, please. As long as an animal cannot give you full consent that it's having a fun time, like in Cujo, for example, where the dog that movie brought me so out of it. It was horrific to watch. However, every time the dog was attacking someone and then it was off camera, but you saw the tail the dog was having a fun time. So now we come to the crowning moment. Which movies on the whole from my entire watch list that I love, hate, found scariest, found most fun. To be fair, I left out the movies that were in my personal extras because we are talking about the official Hooptober challenge and lineup. First up, favorites overall. I have two, and they are Trick or Treat and Sunshine. From full-on rock and roll resurrection to solar flare transcendence, these two couldn't be more different from each other, yet both lit up my October. Most unhinged, definitely the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It was absolute chaos on celluloid. Tom Savini's effects were amazing, and Dennis Hopper's manic energy wielding two chainsaws. It was a pure scream fest and very chaotic. Biggest surprise, definitely V, with its witchcraft, flying coffins, and jaw-dropping practical effects. I didn't expect this movie to be so stunning. The biggest disappointment, Dead Ant. Glam metal gone completely wrong. All CGI, no campy payoff whatsoever. I wanted to like it, but I hated it. Scariest, Night Siren. It's moody, it's feral, and it's painfully human. As somebody who has her roots in that place, it definitely scared me, and it was folk horror that lingered for me for a while. Most fun watch? No question there, Frankenhooker. Exploding prostitutes, neon mayhem, and the talking VHS box that chirps, "Want a date? Going out?" Campy perfection. Loved every second. Will rewatch it for sure. Hooptober definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone. I probably wouldn't have chosen a silent film from the 1920s Japan or a Guatemalan ghost story about politics or even a German satire with chainsaws that I then didn't watch because I didn't want it. No. But that's what makes this challenge so great. The tonal whiplash was very real. One night it's the Wolfman, the next it's Frankenhooker. My letterbox diary looks like an unhinged fever dream. International horror definitely kept things fresh. It makes it so much richer and so much less one-sided. I love American horror, but I do also love my Korean horror movies. I really enjoy the newer Italian horror movies that are coming out. If I may suggest, The Nest, really great movie. I'm glad I did it and finally had an excuse to watch all these movies. There was a lot of gore, cults, and enough fog to fill a forest. Will I do it again next year? Probably. If my brain hasn't melted into goo first. I hope you fevered with me. I hope you had as much fun listening to me rant and rave about these movies as I did. Don't forget to sacrifice the subscribe button to summon my screams. Bye!